It's the Dirty V. We're talking about Valentine's Day. Welcome to the Derrick's Live. Let's go. What's going on out there? Badass moms and dads, welcome to the Derrick's Live. Parenting for generational change tonight. Glad to have you guys. My name is Sean. I'm going to be your host. I'm here with my beautiful wife and co-host, Emily.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. We got Sully, special guesting tonight. What's going on with Sully?
He's not going to last long. He's falling asleep
he
at
is
the table.
falling asleep at the table. He was sleeping on the floor. He's like, guys, it's late. It's past my bedtime. Hope you guys are doing good tonight. We are bringing you this special Valentine's Day episode. It's a fun subject. We've been trying to talk about it for a few hours now, feels like. But so before we get too far in, we want to make sure that you like and subscribe and follow along on whatever your favorite place to listen to this shit is.
Or more than one place.
Or more than one place. Yeah, all of them.
Go through and find all the places.
Yeah, find all the places. Leave that 5-star review. Share it with a friend.
Share it on your social.
Buy a billboard and just put it on your favorite highway.
You should do that.
Yeah, do that. So, seriously though, if you want to be a show sponsor, just hit that inbox.
If you got an extra couple $20 million laying around, we'll totally let you sponsor us during the Super Bowl.
Oh,
even.
yeah, that'd be pretty dope. Derrick's Live Super Bowl ad. Well, it might be something besides the Derrick's Live, huh?
Yeah.
We've been talking about a name change for a little bit. We got a name in the works, and we're excited to announce that to you. It's going to be in just a few weeks that we tell you what it's going to see. I'm not telling you nothing. You don't get, oh, I guess I should switch the camera. I just had it looking at you. I mean, you're a much better view than I am, but I'm just over here talking, and it's just dead on Emily. Hey, you talk now. Emily's protesting tonight. We've had quite the banter this evening. Is a fun.
He keeps muting me.
It's very satisfying. I really can't even explain what it's like to have this little button, and when she just disagrees with me, I hit it, and it's magic.
I'm not even disagreeing. I'm just.
It's amazing. So.
There's going to be a mute conversation in the bedroom tonight.
Oh, ouch. On Valentine's Day, nonetheless.
Oh, it won't be Valentine's Day by the time we get to bed.
Oh, no shit. Well, guys, thanks for listening and thanks for being here. But like for real, it's a kind of a commercial holiday. Not a lot of people, I know a lot of people who hate Valentine's Day just because it's like, it's just an excuse to go spend money and da-da-da-da-da. And why do I have to take you to dinner? And
I don't even like you.
Man, if you don't like your spouse, that's a whole nother conversation. You better figure that shit out. But
there's a lot of unhappy couples at the restaurant tonight. I think it's just the area that we went to. But. Yeah,
we went to dinner. My grandmother's birthday is today. She turned 79 today. And I probably shouldn't have said that on a podcast. I'm sorry, Grandma.
She told the whole restaurant.
Somebody, the waitress told the whole restaurant. But we went to dinner for her birthday tonight, and we live near a very large retirement community that shall remain unnamed that we really don't much care for. But there's a lot of restaurants and stuff there, so.
And it's kind of central between where we live and where our family lives.
Yeah. So it's a nice happy medium, but dang it, the people are just grumpy.
Yeah.
But I digress. But a lot of people don't celebrate the holiday because of the commercialism behind it. But I think it's a nice reminder that you need to be intentional about this stuff.
Well, and I think that, as you kind of stand back and look, a couple of these holidays are kind of placed sporadically throughout the year. So you've got like Valentine's Day and Mother's Day and Father's Day.
Yeah.
Like, hey, reel it back in, pay attention. And so, we would like to take the opportunity to kind of see this holiday for what it could be within your relationship and kind of hit on some points there and use it more as a reset more than just an excuse to
it's kind of
do
a
it
nice
one time.
It is a nice reason to be intentional because listen, life is busy. Sometimes even when you're super intentional, life gets away from you, and before you know it, it's been a few weeks or a month or two, and you turn around and you're like, shit, we haven't spent like any like us time. And so it is a really nice like reason to be purposeful about it, but you shouldn't need a reason. You should be doing it anyway, right? And so I think the heart behind the conversation is that listen, you really don't need an excuse. This is something you should be being intentional about all the time, but it's here, so capitalize on it, right? And so we like to use Valentine's Day as a reminder to really express our love and appreciation for each other and for our children and throughout our family. It's really a nice like reminder and reason to be intentional about it.
Well, and we tend to be specific with our appreciation and our love. I am grateful to you for these things. I appreciate you, and I think that this week specifically, I felt like you went a little bit above and beyond helping loading the dishwasher and unloading the dishwasher. And you do that stuff already, but like you stopped me in the middle of it a couple of times and like, hey, go sit down or go do something else that you want to do. I've got this. And you do that. I mean, you do a lot of the dishes. You do a lot of that, like the after dinner help with the littles. But this week it felt like you went a little bit even above that because you stopped me in the middle when I was already in the midst of unloading the dishwasher or loading the dishwasher or washing dishes.
Yeah, I think honestly that wasn't a lot of that wasn't Valentine's Day. It was just being in tune with what was going on outside of that and as a whole. So I think when you're just in tune with each other, you kind of know when like, hey, I need to step in here and give you a break or be intentional about letting you have some alone time or whatever that looks like. And you hurt your knee this week too, so I was trying to keep you off your knee too. That was part of it.
See. So, but something that we've kind of used as a learning opportunity is that expressing love and appreciation doesn't have to cost a lot of money or cost any money.
No.
Sometimes it's just being helpful. Mm-hmm. It's being in tune with your partner and being in tune with your family and finding out what they need or something that you can help in an area that they are a little bit overwhelmed or maybe not even overwhelmed, but something that you can take off their plate so that they can go and do something else.
Yeah. I mean, it was even like this week, I just moved into a new business office and trying to get some things set up, and you were super intentional about asking how you could help and what you could do to help make things a little bit easier. And you ran some stuff down for me that I'd forgotten. And so it's really just going out of your way to be helpful for your spouse and meet them where they're at and where their need is and really just paying attention to the pulse on things and seeing where you can fill the gap for them really.
Well, and that it really does feed back into the relationship because when I feel like when we've gone out of the way to help each other that you've been able to do stuff that you couldn't have done otherwise. And I've been able to do stuff that I couldn't have done otherwise. Yeah. And we both feel like our tanks got filled up, even though we've been running nonstop.
100%.
So that was kind of eye-opening just to see it kind of play out in practice. And to see it, I didn't feel as drained this week, even though I felt like we've been busier this week.
Yeah, it's been nonstop this week. We haven't like every day.
Last couple of weeks, but yeah, the last 2 weeks specifically, like I felt like we've been going just nonstop, but because we've been in tune and talking and working through that stuff and recognizing how we can support each other, I don't feel as drained as I have
It definitely makes life a lot easier when you're both in the fight together. And so, but again, that's just coming to a place in your marriage that you're really in tune with each other. And so, this is a good reminder of that if you are super intentional about it, life just gets really easier.
So next is remember intimacy.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's really easy in the hustle and the bustle and the busyness of a new year and getting back on track with business and getting back on track with school. And, report cards are coming out soon, or progress reports or whatever. And it's stressful, right? Maybe you're not holding as great to your New Year's resolutions, and you've struggled, or maybe you haven't struggled, but you've been busy. I think that we can use Valentine's Day as kind of a check-in. How have we been intimate with each other? Have we been intimate? Have we been intimate enough with each other? I think sometimes as women, we underestimate how much our spouses, how much our husbands really, truly desire intimacy, how much they desire physical touch, especially the wives that don't desire touch as much. And I think over the last few years, this is something that's kind of been really eye-opening, and it's changed over the course of a relationship. And we've talked a little bit about this in some other episodes, but women, this is a secret weapon. If you know how to hit your guy's buttons, you are reaching him on a different level. Don't be afraid to be intimate, even when stuff is hard, because it really does bridge a gap that a lot of other things can't. There are certain things that you might not ever get to talk to if you're not reaching the intimacy level physically that you and your spouse need. It really does bridge something deep down in the brain that helps a marriage be successful.
Well, I think that men have to understand too that that's not like the physical sexual aspect of it for a woman is not always intimate. I mean, they can find intimacy there and often do, but that's usually not where intimacy starts for a woman. And so I think as men, sometimes we expect you just to be on the same level that we are all of the time. And a guy sometimes guys get frustrated because they don't feel like you're meeting us where we're at. But often you've got to do your part too, right? Like you have a responsibility to kind of keep, like we talked about in that, the sex episode about keeping the pot on simmer, right? Understand what your wife needs out of her intimacy desires and her needs so that you can fulfill that for her too. And that might not be sexual. That might be tuning into whatever her thing is and giving her some of your time and energy to really dive into that with her and be an intellectual conversation or whatever that looks like to feed into that physical aspect of intimacy. But you've got to look beyond just what you're getting in the bedroom, because that's not where it starts.
So something like practical tip that has really changed our intimacy level on a couple of different levels is we started reading together. And I would never have guessed that would have changed our intimacy level, but it changed it drastically, I feel
100%.
like. And we're reading the same books, and we're challenging each other with conversation, with understanding something on a deeper level. And before we know it, that leads to something much more intimate.
Yeah, well, I think we've done really something that's really cool. We are reading some of the same books, but we're also reading different books too. And I think we talk and highlight the things we're pulling from books that we're reading individually. And if we read a book together that we really just feel like is super impactful for us, we'll usually get 2 copies of it and go back through it. And usually we start on Audible. And then if we really like something, we feel like we need to get a physical copy of it, then we'll read it together.
So that's been really influential, I think, for just communication and intimacy on a whole,
It brings a really deep intellectual aspect to intimacy that we haven't really had before.
Yeah.
I'm pretty stupid. I'm not a smart guy.
You are not stupid.
I am not a book smart person though,
I would say but I think you've changed a lot in the last year.
I don't disagree with that, but I would never have categorized myself as an intellectual or someone who was a scholar or something. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't like, I hated school. I couldn't stand history. I hated science even more. The only reason I really kind of liked English because I really enjoyed writing, and I had an English teacher who was a huge Beatles fan and wrote a whole lesson around the Beatles when we were in middle school. And so I kind of dug English because of that too, because of the music. I don't know. It was weird. English was really the only thing I cared for in school. But now I feel like I enjoy the intellectual. See, I can't even talk. The intellectual aspect of growing and learning and diving in and obtaining knowledge.
Well, and for me, that's always kind of been my sweet spot. I've always been a kind of a bookworm. And so I feel like you're challenging me in a place that, I haven't really, as a kid, I was really intelligent. And so I wasn't challenged there because everyone just kind of let me do my thing. And so now I feel like I'm challenged and I'm learning a lot more. And I feel like we have a deeper relationship because we can talk about some things that kind of just get bottled up inside my head.
Well, and you know what I think is really cool is we're pretty quick to call each other on bullshit.
Yeah.
Like if one of us has a thought pattern or like an ideology that is just out there, and sometimes we have them, right? Like one of us will get down a rabbit hole on something and we're trying to like have a thought process that's kind of like out of the box, and the other will be like, yeah, I don't know about that. That's pretty stupid. Or that's pretty far fetched. I think you need to go back and look at that again because that doesn't make any sense. And we're not afraid to really challenge each other's thoughts. And some of the stuff that we dive into.
So, and it's something that we do a lot of times before bed, and in the car during the day. So it's our intimacy level because
I feel like more and more it's just part of all conversation.
All that we do, yeah.
So it's really brought a very interesting aspect to our marriage that I don't think it's really hard to contextualize for people and explain it, because when you're on the same growth trajectory, it just unlocks things. And I can't explain that any better because it's really like you're just in harmony with one another, and everything you do feeds the vision. And if it doesn't feed the vision, you don't waste time on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's just where we're at as a couple. It was just a conscious decision that I don't even know if it was a conscious decision. It's just something.
It was conscious. I mean, I think we made a very deliberate, like we're going to do things different from this point forward. And I don't think we knew exactly the exact path, but I know that we made a deliberate decision to be different.
Yeah.
So I have it on my calendar.
It's like
D-Day. But that leads right into our next point that we capitalize on the table talk, right? So if you're going to dinner this weekend, if you're going on a date, you're already sitting down across from the person that you have decided to do life with for the rest of forever and eternity, right? Don't just talk about the weather. Don't talk about food and all of the terrible things that you might find in a restaurant. Take the time to ask them about where they're at. How are they feeling? How's their year going? As a couple, what are your goals for the year? What are your aspirations for the next 5 years? Have those deep, hard conversations.
Yeah.
You're already there. Capitalize on the moment.
Yeah, well, I feel like there's some of you guys that might not go out to dinner very often, but you'll go out for like special things like Valentine's Day, birthdays. So for some of you, you may be sitting at a table with your spouse for a rare occasion. You might not sit at a table very often with your spouse. And so, we challenge you to start the conversation if you guys are not on the same growth trajectory, if you're not on this path together to become the parents that your children deserve. And you guys need to align. This is a we thing. This is a much, much easier journey if your spouse joins you in the walk. And so take the opportunity while you've got their undivided attention to put your cell phone down and stop texting or thumbing through Facebook while you're sitting at dinner, and have an intentional conversation about changing things or making an adjustment so that you guys can get to where you want to be. It's a great opportunity to just be super intentional about that, because some people don't get all those conversations. You don't get all the opportunities.
And if you're not going out to dinner, it's okay to do it at your own dinner table.
At your own dinner
or
table.
at the couch. Turn the TV off. And instead of watching whatever, binge watch the next season of whatever shows on Netflix this week, take 30 minutes or an hour and have a conversation. Ask them how they are. Ask them how work has been. What's going really good? What needs to change to get better? Ask them about where you are in your marriage and in your intimacy. And it's okay for it to be uncomfortable for a moment. It's not an attack. It's a safe place to have a conversation. But I think that sometimes when we open the door, like, do we need to adjust some things here?
I think sometimes marriages need confrontation.
Yeah.
Right?
I think so.
I mean, I think that some of the biggest growth that we've had in our marriage has come out of confrontation. And we don't have a lot of confrontation, but there have been some moments that we've like just said, hey, listen, this is not, like, we've got to address this. And for us, confrontation looks more like
him using a mute button and laughing. It's much, if you saw it from the outside in, it looks like a comedy session. It doesn't look like confrontation.
It's really quite interesting. But I think it's just this, it's a really important time to be intentional about not being comfortable where you're at. Because if you're not comfortable where you're at, the longer you sit there, the harder it gets to change, right? Because you grow resentment for your spouse, resentment for your children,
for
yourself. And it's just not a healthy spot to be in. And you're avoiding the conversation because you're afraid of the aftermath that's going to come from it. And the reality is that whatever's going to happen was already going to happen, or it's going to be a trajectory point for your life. Those are the only two options, right? Because if you're already harboring that resentment, things are not going to change. They're only going to get worse.
So, and in saying that, a word of warning, if you are a firecracker and you know that you have a tendency to have big emotions, take this opportunity and approach it from the get-go, knowing that you want to have a calm conversation. Don't go in at it I'm going to explode. I know I'm going to explode. This should be a fun conversation. This should be a loving conversation.
Absolutely.
It's a Valentine.
It doesn't have to be a confrontation.
No.
It can be a growth opportunity. Ask your spouse, like, hey, like, what do you think about where we're at right now? Are you, like, is this where you thought we would be? Is this where are you comfortable here? Do you think that we could be better? Do you want to be better? What do you want for our family?
So, and those are hard questions. If you really, as the wife, if you really just want to open the conversation up, ask them if you're having enough sex. Just start there. Like, hey, because one, it'll throw him off balance. And he'll start talking without ever realizing that he's talking.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. So, but in saying that, wives, if the response is absolutely we're not having enough sex, approach it from the point, okay, how do we have more sex? Because I will tell you that when there is an intimacy level and when there is physical stuff within our marriage, that everything else flows much better when we are intimate, because that is how he communicates to me the best, is before, during, and after intimacy. That's where his brain is the strongest. And if we've gone days or weeks, he's not in the right headspace to have a conversation that's deep and meaningful and heartfelt. He's just not. And that's a hard conversation to have. But from personal experience, I can tell you that it made a world of difference when we were intimate on a regular basis for having other conversations later on down the road. Do you agree?
I would agree. I mean, it sounds so like vain or shallow to say, but there is a lot of, there's a lot tied up for most men in their sexual appetite, and we will move mountains to keep you happy if several basic needs are met, and that's a pretty big part of that basic need. So, ladies, if you feel like your fella's not cooperating or being like involved in that process, it's I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying that mindset, I have a hard time with that even in myself, but it's just the reality that some of us live with. And so, you get a lot more bees with milk.
With sugar than vinegar?
Yeah, that one.
But it's true. Like, if you are looking for something more, figure out if there's something lacking first.
Yeah. I mean, and really learn to communicate with your spouse through their love language, because it'll really give you an unfair advantage.
Well, and know what your love language is. So you know how to communicate, how you need communication best towards, affection back towards you. We cannot recommend, the love language book enough. And it's helpful not only for your marriage, but also for your children. So if you haven't read it, we highly recommend it. It's an older book, but the knowledge is just very, very valuable.
Yeah. It's pretty much I think a staple in marriage reading at this point. Even people who aren't Christians know about the 5 love languages. So it's very, very, it's a good book. So you should pick it up, read it. It'll really help you understand your spouse a lot. So, but I think you have to understand that like your marriage is the standard for your children, right? And so if you're not happy with where it's at, and you think your kids can't see that you're not happy, you're fooling yourself, right? Because your kids know you're not happy, and they're gonna think or accept that it's okay to stay in an unhappy spot, or that it's normal to be unhappy. And they're going to settle for less in their own marriages because you're not living to a standard. You have to set the standard for them. And so whatever standard you set in your marriage, they're going to follow. So isn't it worth having that conversation for your kids' sake, so that they can see what a healthy and successful marriage looks like?
So, and I can tell you that as a parent of an adult children, we have multiple adult children, is really hard to watch them be unhappy in a relationship. And it's hard to see that. And it hurts my heart to watch my kids be in pain because of a relationship that they're in. And so we kind of had this realization, like, if your daughter's boyfriend treated her exactly the way your husband treated you on Valentine's Day, do you think that your daughter would be happy or sad?
Or better yet, daddies, if your daughter's boyfriend treated her the same way you treated your wife on Valentine's Day, would you be happy? Because that can be a hard pill to swallow for a daddy. Mm-hmm. All them fellas out there that forgot Valentine's Day and didn't do nothing for their mamas, for their wives.
If you had to watch your daughter run to her bedroom in tears because boyfriend forgot flowers or forgot that it was Valentine's Day altogether, how would you feel as the daddy or as the mom? And that's a hard thing, because you want to say, well, it's just because it's a commercialized holiday and we don't have to make a big deal about it. But the reality is you're still dealing with emotional beings who are still watching. And so if mom's heart is broke even just a little bit and she brushes it off and gets busy with going about the things on the rest of the day, trust me when I tell you, any age child sees all of the emotional things that they know her, just like mom knows them. And if she's hurt in any way, shape, or form, your kids pick up on that and they learn to expect it for themselves. So they're never going to expect to be in a relationship that's full of intimacy, that's full of communication, that's healthy and growing and moving the needle forward, because they never saw it. They don't know what to expect.
Well, and just, you know, vice versa, if you're really living it out and having a whole and a healthy, intentional marriage, especially outside of Valentine's Day, the other 364 days of the year, it really sets a standard for them, and it helps them learn how they're supposed to love. And that's the overall goal, right? Is to show them how to love, because isn't that's legacy, right? That's how you pass this on to them, is you teach them to carry the same standards and expectations that you do. And marriage is a huge part of that. Healthy families is a huge, massive part of your legacy. If you go out and build a business and accumulate all this wealth, but you don't ever grow a healthy family, and your kids are so dysfunctional in their own families that whatever legacy you built is torn down in 1 or 2 generations, what does it matter? You did all of this work for nothing. And so you have this responsibility as a legacy holder, as a legacy builder, to build a healthy family. It's your responsibility to make sure that whatever you and your wife and your family is putting together stands the test of the family. Because if you don't build a healthy family, it's all for nothing. It's going to fall apart.
Well, and the foundation of a healthy family is a healthy marriage. That the head of the household, as the husband and the wife, they form the foundation, and on that back is what everything else is built on. So recognize that you have to be healthy and in a healthy spot with your spouse so that everything else can flourish to the full extent possible. And so from that aspect, going in and being purposeful about watching how your children are learning, teach them how to love and how to express love and how to express appreciation, and talk about it. Like, some of you have really young children, or they're school age. And so they learn really well by watching, but they also learn through communication. Talk to them about what Valentine's Day is. Talk to them about how you celebrate it. And so, like, for us today, it was a really special moment because you were at work, but I had the girls home, and part of our homeschool today was we talked about how can we express love. And so we helped clean up the kitchen, because that was showing thankfulness and gratefulness that when you came home that the kitchen would be cleaned up. And we cleaned up all of our art supplies that were all over the house. And we made handmade cards for everybody in our whole family.
Yeah, that's sweet.
But we talked the whole time through it. Why are we doing this? Who do you think would want a card? And so there was even this moment that they didn't want to make a card for somebody. And we had this really interesting conversation. Like, how do you think that person would feel if they were the only ones that didn't get a card? How would you feel if you were the only one that didn't get a card? And it was this aha moment, like, oh, yeah, I wouldn't like that. And so everything becomes a teaching moment.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Isn't it crazy how everything is just a teachable moment if you make it one?
So, and if you decide that gift giving is part of how you're going to celebrate this holiday or any holiday, and gifts are really a small part of it, but it's learning to give well, right? It's learning to be generous. And so teaching children to give gifts is a good way to teach them to be generous, because it helps them see outside of themselves. Mm-hmm. And so we had this really cool moment because I took the girls to Target and we were looking for something for their Nana because it was her birthday. But in doing that, we had this conversation about buying Dad a Valentine's gift. And so we had this whole big conversation in the middle of Target talking about, okay, so what do you think dad needs? Is there something that you know that dad wants? And our 5-year-old had this like epiphany moment. She's like, Mom, do you remember that day when dad was talking about the brush in the car because he brushed his beard and it felt so good, but he didn't want to take the brush out of the car because he always needed in the car. Can we find him another brush so he can have another brush?
I can't believe she even remembers that conversation.
I didn't even know you were listening to that conversation because that was totally just a conversation between mom and dad in the front seat. And she was in the back and she probably had on headphones or was drawing or had an iPad or a watch or something, but she caught that conversation and immediately, because we were in the like self-care aisle, I was looking for you for beard oil and she like made this 2 and 2. Oh, like he needs another brush because he only has one brush and he really likes that brush. And we've done the same thing with their hairbrushes because they really like a certain hairbrush. We've bought multiple of the same hairbrush. So she put the 2 and 2 together. It was really sweet. But then from there, our 7-year-old was like, well, I know that dad really likes pens because dad likes to write and dad's kind of like an artist like me. So dad probably needs some pens for his new office because I don't think he has enough pens for his office yet. And I said, I think you're right. And dad just told me the kind of pens that he likes. So we were able to kind of I hope we found the right ones, but she had this like cool moment that dad's like me and dad likes to draw and write and he likes certain pens and not all pens are created equal. And she was able to put that into words and like walk through that. And it was a sweet moment because they could see that there were other things that they would have preferred for themselves, right? There were toys, there were brightly colored pens and pencils and, pop-it notebooks right there within reach. And while it caught their eye, they were on a mission. They were looking specifically for dad because that was the mission. And so they're learning to be generous in their giving and purposeful about how they're doing it. And that's a really valuable tool. And I think that it's kind of underrated now. Like we don't always give good gifts. We don't always recognize the people that we love and know them personally. We give generic gifts and generic cards and gift cards and but how sweet is it to know the person that you are giving to? That I did something so specific for you because I know that you need this. It changes the dynamic. And it brings intimacy and love on a different level because it took time. It took effort to learn that thing about the person. It's not easy. You have to pay attention. But we're training our children to pay attention. What is the need? How do we fix it? How do we help? How do we recognize? How do we slow down enough to see the person for who they are and not just be generic?
That's good stuff. It really does. It brings a much deeper level of intimacy. I mean, it's a different kind of intimacy than what you think when you hear the word. But I know opening gifts today from the girls was very special because it was like, hey, I needed that. Oh, I was just talking about that. Like, how did they like? It was cool. So. And I got them gifts too.
Yes, Daddy is buying. Well, he got them each a dozen roses, and they thought that was the coolest thing since sliced bread. Even Addie, our little 2-year-old, was just holding her roses like they were a baby. But we were taking them to their first Broadway style.
Yeah, we're gonna go see Winnie the Pooh
live on stage. So they don't know exactly what we're doing, but we have made it a very special occasion. They're going to get dressed up.
Took them dress shopping, and they got new shoes and purses. And
it's going to be special. So, and it'll be something that grows them too.
It's exciting. So we just want to remind you tonight or today or whatever time you're listening to this to be intentional, right? It's not too late. It fell on a Wednesday or a Tuesday. Which day is Tuesday?
Valentine's is on a Tuesday. It's now.
I'm
Wednesday.
looking at the schedule up here, and it says it's Wednesday. So it fell on a Tuesday. You've got a couple days left to recover. You get a gimme this year. So make sure you pull a last minute reservation together, and go buy a special meal to cook at home, whatever that looks like for you. And just be intentional about sitting together and across from each other and look each other in the face. If it's got to be over a bowl of ramen noodles, put some hot sauce on it. It spices it up a little bit. But this week, just make sure you're intentional. Take the mulligan and make sure that you're really taking the time to love and appreciate and care for each other. And don't settle for just okay.
And use this as the reset for the rest of the year. This is the restart. Do it right from here on forward. You've got this. Be intentional about being intimate. Be intentional about having open communication. Talk to your spouse. And if you haven't had a great success up until this point, it's a new day. You can do this. It can be better. Everything grows when you water it and you take care of it. That's all you got to do.
Fuck those excuses, man.
Jesus fucking loves you.
Deuces. Hey, if you made it this far, we want to give you a special announcement. We're not telling anybody else this. It's not going to be on social media. It's not going to be anywhere else. But we've got a really special promo coming for you. Make sure you come next week. Listen to the very end of the next episode. It's going to be the very last Derrick's Live episode ever. You're not going to want to miss it. It's just the beginning of something much, much bigger. So come back next week. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate you guys being here. And thanks for listening on to this big, long filler at the end of the episode that nobody else is going to listen to except for maybe like 2 people. So you should be really, really fucking proud of yourself for getting this far. Seriously. I don't even know why you're still listening. What are you still doing here? Turn it off. No, for real. Turn it off. Why are you still here? Look, there's not even any video on the screen. It's just a dead screen at this point. And you're still listening. Because the name of the new podcast is Lifting Legacies. Deuces.